Welcome to the Millennial Method podcast, where I dive into the personal stories of millennials that have decided to chase their dreams, overcome challenges, and redefine success in this pivotal era. I'm your host, Marky, and my guest for today is Matthew Gattozzi. He's the owner of GOODOSTUDIos, a creative studio based out of Seattle, where he helps 7 to 8 figure brands make profitable photos and videos. And right now, Matthew Gattozzi, he's living the dream. This is something that I've always wanted to do as well, is to start a literal physical studio and create photos and videos for brands. Incredibly smart dude. He is someone that's super passionate about his work and is someone that I think can give a lot of insight into working with brands, especially in the world of e-commerce. And so we dive into his business. We also talk about performance creative, which is essentially like ads. And we dive into like what makes a good person a good fit for this type of work. And so for any of the people that are interested in working with brands and then want kind of somewhat of a playbook, or for some people that want to start a studio, a creative studio, this is a good listen. And so I hope you guys enjoy it. Matthew, can't wait to meet you in Seattle someday. We've only met, but it was good talking, brother. And without further ado, here is Matthew Gattozzi. All right, and we are live. Matthew, my guy, what's up, man?
Dude, glad to be here. As always, you bring the energy, so I'm just trying to bring it back. I'm just trying to match it.
Bro, I'm so excited to have you on. I mean, when I started this podcast, I had like a short list of people I wanted to ask, and you were in that. I just had to provide you some meat, do a few episodes and then get into this.
Well,
So
I'm honored. I mean, I feel like all of our conversations are always not only like informational, but like deep. And I think I appreciate that always. Like, I think in the industry, it's easy just to kind of like talk about information, but there's people behind all this, right? And so you've always done a really good job of bringing empathy to work, and I appreciate that. So that's what we're here for.
Thanks,
So
man. I
yeah.
appreciate that. And I think just your business and who you are as a person, like, you come from a creative background, and I think you're a dancer too. You said you were a
Yeah,
dancer.
professional dancer. Yeah.
I'm always a b-boy, right? And
Were
so
you really? I didn't know that. Okay,
yeah,
makes
man.
sense. San Francisco. Okay, I
It's,
see you. Okay, it makes sense.
come on now, you know how it goes. Were you a breakdancer too, or was it like choreo? What were you
No,
doing?
no, no, no. Don't catch me on the break dancing. I was doing ballet, man. I was all up.
Yo,
I
what?
was classical ballet, so not like that. But I love hip hop. Do it for fun. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't catch me b-boying though. Watch lots of
Okay.
videos though, but no b-boying myself.
I appreciate the ballet. It's a hard thing. Uh, but yeah, man, the work that you do with your creative studio, I think it's super inspiring. And a majority of my audience, most of this stuff comes out on Instagram. I come from like an Instagram background before the media buying marketing stuff. Most of them are photographers, videographers, traditionally trained, right? So a lot of them are kind of new to this world of e-commerce creative. And, I think you're a perfect person that I think we can talk to about and just kind of dive deep into that, because I think this is potentially a career path for a lot of people that want to explore this option. And so, yeah, I mean, why don't we talk about like kind of like just introduce yourself, like who you are, what's GOODOSTUDIOS, and when you got started.
Yeah, so I think what's cool is that there's such a huge need for creative talent within this space. Like, we're really just like kind of scratching the surface. There's so much that's needed, even just beyond like what my team can do. And even as my team grows, like we still need more people. There's so many brands that need this, whether that's inside brands. So there's going to be lots of opportunities. I think more and more brands will learn how to hire creatives, as well as like outside agencies and things like that. So it's pretty amazing to see how this has grown. And I think I've just been able to kind of just be able to like get that momentum. So I started about 5 years ago on my own. I just had a camera and I had a few photos. And it started when I was living in Austin at the time. I live in Seattle now, but in Austin, I just reached out to every single local business that needed any sort of photo or video for Instagram, and just kind of started building up local business, started to shoot events, things like that. But then when COVID hit, all of that business went away. And I started to think, okay, who else needs content? Well, people in grocery stores. So that's kind of how I got into like CPG, got into consumer products, and then really fell in love with it. And I think the biggest thing that I found, was that there was such a huge need for creative, but the people in marketing had never done that themselves. And so I felt like there was a bridge that needed to be kind of built. And I've really tried over the last few years to build that gap between being a creator myself while also linking the output that I'm producing to revenue and to a business goal. And now having built a team doing that. But that's really like what I've gone after over the last few years. And my ambition is just to continue to grow that, working with the best brands in the world and being seen as the best like in the world when it comes to creating ads for brands.
So you started off with organic, I guess, just helping brands out initially.
Yeah, literally just like anybody that would pay me, I would do it. So like
Sounds like a
interior
similar story.
designers, restaurants, food trucks, anything. I think at the time though too, it took me a minute to learn like more about the impact of the content that I was creating. So I think I had the belief that brands or anybody really needed content. I didn't have a focus yet of where I wanted to go, but I thought that was like the true sentiment. It's like I know that I could build a business around myself or a team, whatever, because I knew that everybody needed content. I think over time I learned the impact of content within like, consumer brands, and I found that there was an opening there. So that's when I started to kind of like niche down there. But yeah, I mean, I've shot pretty much anything you can imagine. I've probably taken a photo of it. So yeah.
That's really cool, man. I mean, well, I'm very curious then, like, how did you get the marketing chops to learn about this, right? Just the e-commerce side and how to do performance creative.
Yeah, so I think for me, I always I'm a huge reader. I'll probably read like I'm more than likely read more books than most people, and I think I can confidently say that. But I think it's just because I think it's just growing up. I saw my family just always constantly learning, and so I kind of took note of that of like, okay, people are always reading books around me, and I just really fell in love with that. I really enjoy doing that. It's like if I thought about a perfect weekend, it would be reading books and drinking coffee. Like that's you can't get any
That's
better than
nice.
that. So I really went and read a ton of different marketing books, and that's when I started to kind of put in the work of like how I could connect content to a lot of what was being said in marketing. And that's really it. And then trial and error, just like keep working at it. It takes a lot of time. And you got to always stay curious. So it's not like I learned something to an extent and then that's it. It's like I'm still learning. I'm still trying to be curious. I'm still trying to push myself, my team to keep learning as well because things are changing. Like 5 years ago, TikTok didn't exist, right?
Right,
So
right.
how I was shooting content for people was very different than how I'm shooting content now. And it'll change in time as well.
So you were self-taught. You didn't go to school for it. You just read the books, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, I never went to college. So after I graduated high school, I went just straight into dancing professionally, moved out from Boston to Seattle, was dancing there, then moved to Austin to dance. I stopped dancing because of an injury. But yeah, like
Mm,
I basically spent so much time self-taught. Like I spent the years I was dancing, I was learning how to use a camera. I was learning how to edit on Adobe Premiere. I would just watch YouTubers, and that's how I learned. And so self-taught there, and then was always I had somebody in my life who owned a business, and he and I just like would talk a lot. He would kind of became a mentor of mine, and he kind of started suggesting books that got me more into like learning about business. This was when I was still dancing, and I just thought it was very interesting. And actually, I was reading a lot of those books, thinking that that would be for like dance, like as like oh, I would use it in that way. But then eventually, after the injury, I shifted to wanting to do like what YouTubers were doing and stuff, and that's kind of how I got started.
what were your ambitions then growing up? Did you want to become a dancer?
Yeah, that was, I mean, I think I'm definitely somebody that's like has like a one focus thing. I think that's really important. Like I spent 10 years training to dance. Like that, it was like very hardcore growing up. And I basically am taking that same approach to this. Like I'm looking at this not as like oh, this is going to happen in like an overnight success. Like this is going to take years, 10 years at least until I'm at a decent place, in my opinion. But, I think if you want to be the best, then you've got to be willing to put in the work over a long period of time. And yeah, I mean, I did that with dance, and that's what I'm pursuing now with creating ads.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I want to like let's dive into Goodo Studios. That's a nice little spot you got there. um, what does your team look like? Like who do you have on your team?
Yeah, so Go Studios, we create content for consumer brands. That's their whole goal. We've got two full-time editors, a production manager, a full-time video content creator, and then myself. So that's kind of our squad. We have some other part-time people, whether that's for account management or for extra editing and things like that. So yeah, that's really who we have. We're based in Seattle. We do have some people that are remote, but we all of our production is here in Seattle.
Yeah, and I think that's what separates you guys is just that physical location. Is there anyone else doing that? Do you happen to know?
I mean, I think there might be a few people, but I definitely would say that, in our space, like within direct to consumer, yeah, it's pretty much just an arbitrage between, some person, creators, and brands, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
so
usual.
that's the usual, right? And so one thing that that's actually an interesting point though, because, a while back, I did try that because that's what I saw was how people were doing it, right? So obviously it was shooting my own stuff, but then with the rise of like TikTok and all that stuff, people wanted that type of video. So started working with a few creators to do that. Now, the issue that I had and that what I found was that I wasn't able to control the visuals. I wasn't able to control truly the output. And I did not like that. I didn't like not being able to like have that finished
Create a
product
bathroom
be
or something.
yeah, like just like well, it's just like, I'm like, oh, I would have shot that differently, or I can shoot
Yeah,
that better. And I felt like I'm giving stuff that I wasn't excited about, which doesn't make sense. And so I should figure out how do I do this um that where I feel like I'm giving the best content to the brand, not like how it's being done by other people. And so that's when I really went after like, okay, how do I shift to focusing with actors, shooting everything in house? Not only did the quality get better, but I think the content itself just got better because we were able to have way more control of the setting and everything that's happening. And I think it's just a better product for the client. Like, and I think I definitely, have taken a lot of flack, maybe in the last year or two, really going out there and saying, hey, you should make pretty ads that convert, but pretty, right? And like the whole notion of like it needs to be ugly, da 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 da. And I'm like the biggest opponent against that sentiment because I think there's way more nuance to it. But now, more than ever, people are seeing our work and they're saying, wait, I actually want something that looks good, converts, but looks good, right? Conversion is like the minimum. Everybody should be trying to get something that converts, but something that actually has quality to it, that's lacking. And that's actually now what stands out, funny enough. And
right.
so I kind of put a flag in the ground, and I think, we're being rewarded for it. And, I think that it's a good thing because, if you're just doing UGC, you can't do VR ads. We will be able to do VR ads. Like we can adapt to how media changes. We're not a company that was built on a trend. We're a company that's built to make the best ads in the world. And I think that's a huge difference for long term for brands to think about.
Yeah, it's like owned media, right? I mean, you're creating, branded content that's original versus just using like talent, right? Versus a trend, is
Yeah,
like what you were saying.
and also too, like I really believe in like a visual brand and it being cohesive. Like there's something to say about that. Like you can't not say that that's true. So like you don't want some like jarring ad and then you go onto this website and it's like a completely different experience. Now, granted, like content should feel seamless within a timeline versus website. Like there's going to be differences. So I'm not saying it's like one for one the same, but there's a lot of benefits when we as a provider of content can give you ad creative, can give you really nice photos, and like the economies of scale is just way better in terms of value that we can provide. And we're able to do that because we have all the cameras to do all those things. We have the ability to do all those things. We have the team to produce those shoots. Like, it's just like, to me, it becomes a no-brainer offer for brands where they can kind of find that one-stop shop that understands, like, hey, when you take this photo, there's performance behind why we shot that photo, just as much as there is true for the ad that we shot for you as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And are you like, do you find yourself traveling nowadays? Or are you mostly in the studio and people just kind of send you the product and like what's that like?
Most of the time, it is like I would say 95% of the time, it's going to be people sending product to us and we do everything. I think, if somebody really wanted to travel to shoot, not that you couldn't, but I would definitely say that it might sacrifice a lot of quality that we can control here. Like there's very few times where I would be like, yes, you need it. Like unless a product is specific, like for example, like say a swimwear brand and it's
Right.
like January in Seattle, you're not going to get a lot of sun, you're not going to get like, a lot of beach action going on. So yeah, you might need to travel to Miami for that. But we're not, for the most part, not shooting all that, so I think that's okay. But yeah, majority of the time saying it's a studio. Now if we don't shoot everything in the studio, we
Yeah.
will rent out houses and other things like that. Our studio is small, but it does have some components where we can shoot a lot of stuff, which is nice. Even just small things like unboxings or just all that stuff, like we can do it all here. We have all the lights, we have all the cameras, like everything's like set up ready to go. So to me, what I love is that it's a space to create. My video content creator, she can come in and she just cranks. Like she's got her AirPods in, she's listening to music, and she's just taking B-roll shots, and it's like, yeah, like this is gonna be awesome. And I think that's really special to have a space like that.
And I think that's one of the biggest advantage too is like the output, right? Just the volume of output. Like you said, your girl's just going away, hacking away like tons of videos. Whereas if you were to do this with a creator online, it's like you'll maybe get a few that are pretty good. And so
Yeah, I would say like, for the quality and speed, like that balance that we hit is pretty good. I mean, obviously I'm going to be always pushing for more and more speed while I'm
yeah.
maintaining that quality. That's going to be the hardest thing. But I would say that, on a whole, we do a very good job with that. And if we miss things, then like we always try to make it up for clients. We're not always perfect, but I think we do a good job of really trying to hit that balance of speed and quality.
Yeah. So speaking about the studio, I mean, you're making sets, right? You're working with creators, you're filming things, you're building things, you're directing. Can you tell me? I've been always curious about this, but like, what is a week like at the studio? What's the day to day? I'm curious. It seems like you guys do a lot.
Oh, yeah, dude, we do a lot. So I would say that right now where we are, so Monday usually tends to be internal meetings, so that kind of gets us all set up for the week. We try to shoot Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday's also kind of a wrap up. Now, does that happen? Usually not the case. Like this week we shot Monday, we're shooting Thursday, let's say, and then Friday. So like it also depends on, talent availability. So we might get a certain talent that we really want for the shot, but we're not able to get them until like a Friday or something. So that's like not perfect, but we are shooting about 3 times a week now. I would say that it always feels like every week feels like a complete blitz, that's what it feels like. Ads don't stop. That's the hardest thing I think about this business is that ads don't take vacations. In fact, when people are taking vacations
You're probably
or
working.
holidays, that's when they're on their phones, so that's when they're buying the most, right? So that's the hardest thing. But I would say that yeah, Monday all team meetings, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I'm taking client meetings, and then we've got shooting happening maybe at the same time. Like literally as we're doing this, somebody's building a couch and shooting a video of us building a couch in the studio. And then there's our Fridays as well as kind of reviews, like one-on-ones, making sure that like we're getting everything out the door. And then all while that's happening, editing is happening throughout every single day. We've got two editors pounding away on Adobe Premiere and then uploading assets. I'm reviewing those assets and making sure that they're good to go. And then there's lots of back and forth in Slack. So it gets chaotic at times, but it's fun, and the team is awesome, and super grateful for them because when I look back on where I started to where I am, like I wouldn't be anywhere without them. Like every single person brings so much to the team, and so yeah, I think I'm nothing without the team. So and I have big ambitions and goals, but I also know that those goals and ambitions cannot happen if I don't have a great team. It's not going to be on me. I don't believe in being self-made because there's nothing self-made about the business right now. It's really about the people, and so I'm grateful for them for sure.
When we're talking about team here, I mean, obviously you have a team now, and you've worked with a ton of creative people. When you think about that, what makes a really good creative team?
I think that I've had to learn how to not manage the creative, but to inspire the creative. So it's easy having, there's some value of me having done every single job. Like I know how to shoot, I know how to edit, I can do all those things. But I think where most creatives really fail if they want to grow is that they still are doing the thing. And then even if they try to bring on an editor to help them or whatever, they tend to control it too much versus giving that editor the space to say, to do the work, right? And I think it's a time thing as well. Like, wouldn't it be better for an editor to spend 8 hours of their day on the edit versus you doing it in 1 hour? And like, yeah, you might have done it faster, but maybe you rushed through things, maybe you missed a lot of things. And so, yeah, you got to learn how to coach the creatives and bring them up. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to team. And then also too, like not every single person is like editing, but like I have a saying that everybody's an artist because to me problem solving is about being creative, and there's problems all over the place, whether that's account management, whether that's sales, whether that's finances, it doesn't matter, and everybody needs to feel empowered to be creative. And I think you got to foster that environment. I think most brands and most brands struggle to hire creatives because they see these creative people as like very binary, like output. It's all output focused, but that's not how creatives work. They work off of energy. They have good energy, bad energy. So some days it's going to be less outputs, days it's going to be great output. And I think a lot of brands don't know how to manage artists and even lots of agencies. And so I think that's the difference that we're trying to do is I'm an artist first. It's how I consider myself. So I'm trying to create a space for the best artists in the world to come and work. And yeah, that's also my ambition. Just as much as it is to be the best in class in ads, it's also the place to be the best in class to learn how to be a creator. That's my goal too.
Yeah, and that's gonna touch on a lot of what we're gonna talk about later, which is like this creative strategist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back to kind of talking about just the brands that you've worked with. I mean, many of you guys know Hexclad, right? Harry's, all those guys. I mean, you've had them as clients. Do you remember your first time landing an e-commerce client that was just really big for you and you were excited about? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a few things. Like one is that if I'm being honest, not a client will never like save you, like you still got to do the work. I think it's easy to chase the high of getting the client, but I think the clients that I think I've had the most fun with are the ones that I've stayed on the longest with and have really excelled. That to me is the best thing. I would say that it is exciting when you get to work with great teams. I've been honored to work with some really great brands. Whether we still work with them or not, they've made me better, right? If I failed, I became better at that. And I think that that's really special. And I feel honored that I got to learn from some really great people and continue to like learn from some really great people. I'm always really excited when a brand has, let's say, some people that I've been following for a while, and like I get to work with them. I kind of like to have that heat, a little bit like, oh shoot, like okay, big dogs in
Yeah.
the room here. I gotta like show up, and that's really special to me. I want to be pushed myself, and so it's really cool to work with some amazing people, and also too like there's some really great people that work in brand that don't put out a lot of content, don't put out a lot of stuff. Man, they're just really good at what they do, and that's just really special to be a part of. And so I'm really grateful. Like, yeah, there's definitely people that have followings that I've worked with, but also just like there's some really smart people out there, and getting to work with those people is pretty amazing for me, and it definitely pushes me to be my best. So yeah, I really love that.
Have you found yourself, because you're a creative studio, but have you found yourself like training these brands about performance creative, or they kind of already know that direction?
I would say that, some of the bigger brands, they definitely already know, they might be looking for us to be one of their many inputs. So there's a lot of times where, with some of these bigger brands, they need so much content, and like it's not like we can even fulfill all of that content all in one go. So we might just be one of many providers. There are definitely times where, when we are working with this more smaller brands, if you will, where we are in charge of all of their creative strategy and helping them completely end to end with all of their creative. And that's really exciting, just as much as being with these bigger brands, cool names and all that stuff. But it's just as exciting to see a smaller brand really grow. I actually think it's harder
Yeah.
because you're building brands, you're building trust with consumers. And so, that being said, like I would say that in those cases, yeah, we are helping them say, hey, like you haven't really tested these things. Like here are some options that we can go for. My goal is to empower, the brand to make decisions. So we're going to come in as experts to help them with ideas. Hey, here are the ideas. What do you want to prioritize? And we give them their opinion, but then help them feel empowered by the creative that they're going to get, so that they feel super excited about not only what's being put out there, but just excited about the ideas that we're coming up with them.
When you think about, like you said, the fun brands that you've worked with, or just the brands that you have the best relationships with, like what fosters that? What's a good relationship with you guys?
Two things that I think recently just kind of popped in to me recently with just some other client experiences, which is when they trust you and say, how do I get out of your way? Like the other day we had a
Mm,
call and that person said that, and I was just in my mind, I was like, man, that's got to be the greatest thing I've ever heard. It's just like the person asked, like, how do I get out of your way? I don't want to nitpick the script so much that I put my bias inside of things. So I think that's like one thing that I love is when if a brand like hires us, they hire us and they trust us and they let us do what we do best. So that's really special. And then I would say whenever like they're very responsive and just kind of like encouraging, right? Like work and art collaboration, it doesn't happen all in the first go, but really giving positive signs like, hey, like this didn't work out well, but here's how we can improve. So it's okay. It doesn't mean that you lie. Something sucks, it
right.
sucks.
Yeah.
But how you give that feedback is really important. I actually, going back to that idea of like, I don't know if brands know how to like manage artists, and this is true for any company, not just in DC, this is just in general. It's because artists type people, they tend to have a little bit more empathy and emotional kind of aspects to them. And so usually when it's feedback, it's really comes off as harsh or offensive, even if that person didn't mean it. And I think that's true within client like relationships. It's like, hey, like go out of your way to say thank you, go out of your way to be great. Now, what I'll say is that on the other side of it, it's just as important to match that energy, right? It's just as important to you know, be very humble to correction, be very humble to learning from the brand or the other agency that you might be collaborating with. That's so important. And, I think for creative work, there's so much back and forth that happens, and be open to that. Like, first idea, your first pass of things might not be perfect, and that's okay. So I think it takes two to tango. I think a lot of times it's easy to blame brands for something when it's very much our issue as well. And so, I know that Goodo's not perfect for sure. We're definitely trying our best. We're trying to constantly improve. But what I will say is that we will do everything in our power to make it right. So if something is wrong, we'll reshoot. If something, and we're not charging for reshoots. We take that, we eat that cost because we want to make it right. But I do think that, like, from the brand side, if you're hiring an agency or creative studio, those two things can really go such a long way to helping us be our best.
So true about what you said about artists. Like we're so into our work, and sometimes we can be sensitive about it. Have you had, not a situation, but like where you've either received feedback and give feedback and it was just like it didn't end well, or like you want to give feedback in the right way but it just didn't come off that way?
Oh, for sure. I think something that I wish people more talked about, because I'm always surprised, even like with the bigger agencies, the bigger names, it's like, oh, like you had a bad experience. Because to me, I have bad experiences, not all the time, but I have had bad
Yeah.
experiences, right? And I'm like, is that just me? And then like sometimes I'll hear things like, oh, I had a bad experience with big agency X, and I'm like, oh, like they messed up too. Like I'm always thinking like these guys got to be perfect, like and like I'm just sucking out here. So yeah, like, does that happen? Of course. That now the biggest thing I'll say is that, like, it's so easy to just be like, oh well, that person is bad or this or that, but it's like there's a reason why that person has an issue with whatever's being created.
Yeah.
Most likely, it's an expectation thing, and the best thing you can do is not get defensive. Best thing you can do is actually go on the offensive of humility and try to find out what went wrong. Like, what was the expectation? How can you learn? How do you make it right? Like, that's the goal. We are in the business of service. You serve them. It's not that they're always right. It's not, oh, the customer's always right situation, but it's you are always serving them. And you need to be striving for that. So, yeah, bad feedback happens all the time. That things that you thought were going to go well don't go well. You miss a miscommunication, this, that's when you got to be able to learn and be humble. The people that are going to excel are the ones that are going to take that and not be defensive and say, oh, that client was this and that. It's like, don't badmouth your clients. Figure out what you can do better, because more than likely there's a lot that was in your power to improve. You're not going to always be perfect, but you got to always strive to serve them first. So I've only got great things to say about clients, regardless of whatever happens, because they trusted me, they've supported me in whatever way possible, and I'm grateful for that.
So as a person who you manage your team, you give feedback, right? Do you have a framework of how you give feedback so that way it's reciprocated the right way?
Yeah, I think it really kind of depends on the
Like the person?
or like situation, right? Like if it's something really quick and it's like do this or that, like it might be like what would feel not colder but just kind of like quicker. Usually on the first pass of content, what I like to do, because we usually are like the editors will upload the videos, and then I'm like going through the video and with timestamps giving my edits. Usually, like unless like I will then give them those edits to them and say, hey, this was good, I like this and that, here are some edits that you can like work on. They also know, and I tell them, you don't need to prove anything to me. I'm working with you because you've already proved yourself. Like, this is not about proving, this is just about us collaborating to getting the best ad. So they know that they are not in the situation of I'm on the hot seat every single time I've got this edit going. Like,
Yeah.
are they going to hate me or not? Like, I cut that out immediately. If I hire you, it's because I've hired you for a reason. I've already vetted you, I've already worked with you or whatever to make sure that you're here. But once you're here, I trust you 100%, which might be different for most people. I don't know, but I think that helps giving that feedback because I've I've instilled that confidence within them that I'm not, and never am I ever saying anything about them when I'm coming up with edits. It's literally about the edit itself. And I drill that in to people because I don't want them to be offended. I'm never like gonna be rude. And I also try to keep, if I ever had a conversation like on a call, I try to keep it very like, light and easy. There's also plenty of times where I try to find out maybe there was something that I miscommunicated about what was going to happen on the edit. Again, so it's easy to be aggressive and defensive about things, but more than likely there was something that went wrong, and that's probably my issue, right? And so I always have to have that empathy, and I think most people lack that, unfortunately, which ends up hurting the creative.
It's not about you, it's about the edit. I love that. I'm gonna get that tatted right here.
I know, I should probably get that tattoo. That sounds like a good tattoo. I like it.
Love it. Yeah. Going back to like just the good clients that you have and the favorite people you work with, like I, I'm pretty familiar with generating leads for a digital agency. Is it like for a creative agency, do you think it's something similar? Or a creative studio? Like how do you generate their best leads and where do they come from?
Obviously, you got to do great work. I think that helps. But I think like, there's a lot of great photographers out there, a lot of great videographers out there, and so on, creators, whatever, right? Whatever service, there's going to be great artists out there. But when you're working with a client or with a business, they're paying not only for an output, they're paying for an experience. And I think most people miss that. And so it's not about just getting it done. It's about like kind of like the insurance, like, hey, I'm gonna be taken care of. And so I think, if we can get good referrals, so people who have worked with us and have had a great experience, they can say, hey, I've got a great experience with Good O Studios. You're gonna have a great experience too. That helps because people want to know that they're going to be taken care of. Like, yes, it is priced, like sure, but like when you really think about it, you want a partner and you want to see yourself as their creative partner. I think most people don't see it that way, and unfortunately, that leads to like a bad experience. Again, have we do we get it right all the time? No. Sometimes we're actually not a good fit, and maybe that we should have done a better job at the beginning to figure that out or whatever. But regardless, I think it comes down to experience, and that I think really helps sell the service because again, it's a service. It's not just the output. It's not just here's 4 videos. It's the experience to get those 4 videos. It's very different. I really try to mimic or I think a lot about a 3-star Michelin restaurant. It's very different than Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Like Chick-fil-A is great. I love Chick-fil-A, don't get me wrong. But that experience is going to be very different than a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Could I go that route and build and scale like Chick-fil-A? Yeah, I could, but that's just not what I have been attracted to. I've been attracted to unique content for brands that want to stand out and be unique. If that is a brand if that's brand like, then great, like I want to do that. And so, yeah, if you think about what that would cost and the experience that would be, very different than at Chick-fil-A. Even though Chick-fil-A is really nice and they are great workers, it's just a different experience, and I think you got to think about what you want in terms of an experience, and that will really help understand how you can sell better.
So when you first started off, were you cold emailing? Like was it referral? Was it always referral business? How did you get your first
Mm,
client?
dang. So I mean, like way back in the day, like when I was just doing like
Like
uh
organic stuff?
yeah, like when I was just doing like way back in Austin, it was just like I would go on Google Maps and I would open up a street and I would go business to business and just email them with my 2
Oh,
photos.
amazing. Yeah.
But now I would say, I've really started focusing on writing about how writing about how content relates to marketing. And nobody was talking about that. Like 3 years ago, people weren't talking about ads and like talking about how to make them and what goes into them. Nobody was talking about that. Now there's a lot of people that talk about it. People like talk about creative strategy now. They weren't talking about that but way back in the day. And so and way back in the day, only 3 years ago. But that was the biggest thing. Is I was on LinkedIn, is on Twitter, started to network with people, and you get one result, you get one client, start to find the next one, try and find the next one, and you just gotta like, you just gotta go one after the other. When you do great work, you can ask for referrals, and they know other people, and they'll bring great work to you, and that definitely helps for sure. But at the end of the day, it's is it, should you cold email, should you do this, should you do that? Honestly, make great work first. Like, if you can't fulfill it, then who cares, right? So I think people really try too much to think about net new business versus just retention, and
Yeah.
that's been the biggest focus that I've been focusing on with my team. Is like, we are not gonna churn. Like, maybe we'll churn because of budgetary things or whatever, but like, I don't want to churn because of bad service. Like,
Mm.
we are not going to do that. Like, we are at all costs going to keep them. And so, yeah, I think that's important. If you do great service, you won't have to worry about net new. You'll just be able to keep your base, and that's strong for a business.
Google Maps and then sharing your portfolio. That's back in the
Yo,
day, huh? That's crazy.
grind. I would wake up, go to a coffee shop, and then
Yeah.
just like for hours, just email, and it was, yeah, just got a few. And that's all it takes.
If you were to, I mean, you kind of said already, but if you were to do it all over again, is that something you would do? Is the cold thing? And then I would imagine I would want to put a Loom video on there just to show like I'm personal, because there's so many like AI outreach cold email things nowadays. It's so easy to spot. So I'd want to
I
personalize
mean,
it a little bit.
would I do it differently? I think like yes and no. Like, I always think about this because I'm always like, would I do my career differently? Like, I tell people, don't do what I did, because you should go work for somebody, a brand, an agency, do that, and then kind of freelance on the side, build a book of business, and then quit and go full time. That's not what I did. I didn't have a college degree. I had just finished dancing, and nobody would hire me for social media stuff, even though I was very interested in it, because I didn't have a degree. I think that would be different now,
Mm.
but like, even 5 years ago, that was a very different conversation. Like, it's changed how people look at university and college degrees. So I kind of was forced into doing that. But the thing is that maybe if I wasn't forced into doing it, I wouldn't find the success where I am today. So should you just randomly start with no money? Maybe, maybe not. I think I would take on projects or clients that didn't really resonate with me because I needed to. But I think, yeah, and so maybe that kind of prolonged my growth. But then at the same time, it's like, it's hard to say, because I think everything's a growing moment. So like, I wouldn't like, I don't regret anything. I wouldn't change anything, but that would be my advice: is just focus on doing great work and trying to find that however you can. But I would definitely say that, like, lead gen is very hard, so
Yeah.
referrals is the best way. Like, it's the best, easiest way to get those intros, and ultimately you just gotta stay in it longer than everybody else. Like, you just gotta withstand time. Like, if you can withstand time, like, eventually your network will grow, 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 and grow, and you get this like waterfall effect. But like, yeah, it just takes a lot of time. You just gotta be willing to withstand that for a big amount of time.
It sounds like what you did when you started was playing the game on hard mode. It could have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I definitely think, like, if you were working with like another company or something, you learn about like systems and things like that. Like, I'm building systems, but like, I probably spent a lot of time making mistakes just because I never was hired. Like, I wasn't in like brand, like, internally or whatever. So it's like, I didn't know what I didn't know. But at the same time, it's like, if I
It might
knew all
help you.
those things, yeah, like, it's almost like I approach it the way I think is what I intuitively think is good, which could be helpful because I'm not stuck in, oh, this is how everybody does it. So again, there's always pros and cons to it, and I don't know where I land, but that's just how I see it.
Amazing. Yeah. Let's talk about the creative strategist. So I missed a call from Foxwell, but there was one of those calls. You guys had like 8 people in there. and I wanted
Yeah,
to
it's a
hop on
lot.
that. And to me, that just tells me like this is such a demand for this topic. I talked to Evan from Motion, a good guy, good friend of mine, and we were just talking about the creative strategist and what he thinks is a creative strategist, and for him, it's like kind of like the marriage between the media buyer and the creative team, right? I want to know, in your opinion, like what is the creative strategist role? How would you define that?
Yeah, I would say that the creative strategist is kind of like the liaison between, yeah, the content production and the media buying effort, and really is in charge of the complete feedback loop. So you've got content production, or sorry, you've got the creative strategy, like not so the strategist creates the strategy. That's all it
Yep.
creates, what the ads are going to be, all that stuff. Then brings that to the production, whether that's in house, out of house, a mixture of both, whatever. But content gets produced, and then that strategist needs to confirm that that content is what that person was looking for, and then sends it to the media buyer. The media buyer then places the ads, monitors the ads, understands the budget, yada yada yada. The creative strategist will then look with the media buyer about the data. They come up with what's a winner, what's not a winner, why is that the case, and then that creative strategist goes back to step one and say, all right, now let's do it all again. Where do we improve? Where do we optimize? And then you just keep going back through those stages, and it creates the loop. But the creative strategist is a person who's in all of those loops, or each of the stages of that loop.
Who's the creative strategist on your team? Is it you?
Yeah, we did have a full-time creative strategist who just left us. So right now it's currently me. We have adopted though kind of a different approach where we as a team are coming up with the ideas, and then somebody else on the team is writing the scripts. So we've kind of like fractionalized it a little bit, and then I'm maintaining the overall strategy. So you would see me as the person that's like on all of the each of the stages and making sure everything's going through. But we have kind of fractionalized that ideation aspect. And one thing that I will say is that actually has been a very powerful thing. So when originally it was just very much like one person. If you have all of your creative strategy from one person, it's one perspective, one bias, and there's value to that. Don't get me wrong, you need somebody to kind of go through the whole cycle. But it has been very interesting to have each person kind of come up with ideas I would never have come up with, or they have hesitations about the product, which helps us because I would not have thought about those hesitations. And so I actually would, I think that more people should think about how does your team come up with ideas. Now, there's got to be a balance of like, at the end of the day, it's not that everybody gets to do their idea, but the creative strategist can basically get all of these ideas and then from there decide which ones that he or she wants to, go after for the account. So there should be, this decision maker, which would be the creative strategist, but outsourcing or resourcing your team and their ideas is actually like been pretty incredible. We've been doing it for the last month, and the ads that we've been producing have been way more creative and way more interesting.
That's really interesting. Can you give me an example of what that looks like? Because I could see it in my head. So you kind of have like you're the high level, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
you kind of put everything together, but then you fractionalize the work. So do you have someone doing the copywriting, someone doing the video editing? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so basically, like we have a 2 hour call, and also I have time, so we're good. So we have multiple stages. So we have multiple people come in. We have one call. It's 2 hours long. Everybody for each of our brands brings in ideas. We discuss those ideas. We come up with those ideas. We take notes on those ideas. Then I will decide of what we need for each client. Some have lots of videos. Some have a few videos. Here are the ideas. Then there somebody on our team, she does all the script writing, writes out everything, adds all the b-roll, and we look at it, confirm everything. Then once the client accepts it all, then we put that into production, planning everything out, shooting everything, editing it all, and then yeah, that's how it's done. But yeah, there's a whole team that does production, video shooting, and editing. So each of those stages is uh, booked out per person.
I like that because, as you mentioned, everyone's got their own skews, right? Like some people are just extremely good writers, some people are just amazing editors. And when you can fractionalize the role like that, you get all these different minds and perspectives. And then all of a sudden, you have this strategy that just puts every single brain into that, you know? And when you think about the role, like with that in mind, right? I mean, because everyone's really good at something, but just in general, when you think about like when you think about a creative strategist, what are they best at?
The reason why there's not a lot of creative strategists is because there's not a lot of creative people that can be analytical.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank. It's new. It's what I really understood 3 years ago, that there needed to be more intention behind what was being created. I am not at all saying that I pioneered creative strategy, because that's not what is true. But I'm just saying that putting those two things together is rare, and I think it takes time for people to grow into that role. So it's practice, but that's what I would say. It's being able to balance creative and analytics, and being able to bridge that gap and understanding how those two things connect. Now everybody in on the role. Every role should understand that, right? Like the goal is to make a great ad. How do you do that? You need to sell. Okay. Let's look at the data. Did this ad sell? Yes or no? Right? Like every single person on that's creating content should know that, whether they're just the editor or just the copywriter or whatever. But I think the creative strategist needs to be able to see the big picture as well, not just ad to ad, but also like long term. How are they, building the brand or hurting the brand? They need to be able to see both of those things.
And so, for the video editor or designer that wants to level up to a creative strategist,
Mhm.
how do they get there? What are the steps?
They need to ultimately like ask questions with the media buyer. Say, hey, can you send me the data? Let's go through the data, right? Or
Hmm.
especially if you don't have a creative strategist, like whoever's in charge of the data, like that needs to be posted everywhere. But then it's up to the editor or whoever, right, to say, okay, let me look back on my work. Let's look back on the ad. Everybody loves to come up with new ideas. Very few people love to do a postmortem of the content they already created.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so I think that's really good, is to be able to like look at your edits objectively and say, oh, that was actually kind of slow. Or like, oh, like the drop off was at 8 seconds. Yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm confused at 9 seconds too. Like now that I see this with fresh eyes, like 2 weeks later. So as long as you can, like similar to athletes, they watch game tape, watch your own
Yeah.
game tape. That's how I would view it.
Hot take question for you. Do you think creative strategists should learn about media buying?
Ooh, dang, that's a great question. I would say it's weird. We're in a weird time. I feel like we're in the middle here. I would say no. So here's why. Because like if I mean they should know some basics. Like if they should be able to look at an account and know if it's like completely jacked or not. They should know, like they should have clear understandings of like maybe why certain ad sets are the way that they are, or certain structural things, sure. But I would say that where they need to really focus on is like the the data, in the sense of the creative metrics, and how that connects with revenue, as well as connects with the actual content that's being created. I think it's the media buyer, if anything, is the one that's really should, I think, start to kind of like, as media buying becomes more and more algorithmic, whatever, like based on the algorithm, then they might need to be more pushing towards the creative strategist than anything. But I'm not sure about that, because I don't know if those people are going to be the most creative minds, which is fine because they're very analytical. But I do think there's a lot of value of understanding still with like finances. I see media buyers going more towards finances, and I do see creative people going more towards data. And I think that's where the shift is going to be.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I had a Evan said the opposite. So there's two sides of the coin there.
Really?
Yeah, well, also because he comes from an analytical background.
Yeah.
He's data focused. So yeah, that's just interesting. I wanted to throw that in there because
I
I
definitely
interviewed.
I definitely am like just trust the media buyer. I think that's how I roll. I think if we started offering media buying as a service, it would be kind of chaotic. So I think that there's a lot of nuances and things that are really impressive about a media buyer. So I want to make sure that they get their
You get their
praise, because I think
flowers. Yeah.
yeah, because sometimes I feel like they don't get as much love anymore. But I will say that I think as a creative strategist, if they're too much in the weeds of the account, I feel like you start to lose a little bit about where they're supposed to be, because they need to be looking at the whole production from top down. Like media buyers need to be just in the account. Editors need to be just in Premiere. Like, you know what I mean? Like where the creative strategist needs to be kind of high level everywhere versus like in the weeds of an account structure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I see it so often too, like especially the smaller teams, these media buyers ended up becoming the creative strategists because there's no one to hold that position, right? And so then they're in a position where it's like they're not creative, and then the creative suffers for that. And I think that's where the marriage is, right? Is to find someone that could do both, like you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say someone wants to work at Goodo Studios. Yeah, maybe it's a video person, designer, or whatever. And I'm curious, are you looking like what does the ideal person look like? Like, do they need a marketing background? And the reason why I asked this is because more recently, someone wanted to work for us, right? And it was this, freelance creative. I'm like, okay, yeah, send me your stuff. I look at his stuff, and it's like none of it I would use, at least for like ads and performance, right? It was more of like the cinematics of things, right? Portraits, headshots of people. It's not really like ad centric. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of the context of that. But yeah, how does one get hired into Goodo Studios?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like, there's not enough, like, direct to consumer marketing creative talent. That's the issue. So my like, I wouldn't say like, oh, you need to have direct response ads. It's like most people don't have that. What I care about is, can they do great work? Like, have they been able to achieve great work, right? Regardless of, you know, direct response or not, whatever. Like, I can tell. Then, because you can always teach that on the back end. Hard to teach people that like don't have a good eye, or like don't have like good, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like that's hard to teach. That's going to take a lot longer than being like, okay, you've got this really great raw talent. Now it's like put this talent within the space of, you know, marketing. Like, that's
Mm.
way easier. So I look for like just like a good eye. Does like person have a good eye? And then you got, when you talk to them, like it's all about figuring out like, are they like humble? Like, are they willing to learn? Like, you have to be upfront and say, what we do is different than what you've produced. If you're okay with that, then you need to be okay with like learning our system. We've kind of built a system of how we edit everything, so it's very clear. And I would say that, like, yeah, if people can't hit that system, then they're not going to make it. But we should give you all the resources possible to do it in our way. But if you're good, you'll be able to thrive in that system. And it doesn't really matter about like, did you have a marketing background or not? But we would spend a lot of time over the course of a few months to get you up to speed.
So it's the good eye right off the bat, and then also just kind empathy.
Yeah, you got to
That
be willing to take correction, man. If you can't do
yeah.
that, like if you think it's like your way or the highway, then you're not gonna make it. In general, you're not gonna make it. But definitely, like, if I try to lead as much as possible with the humility, and trying to find how am I getting in the way of my team, and figuring that out every day. And I would say, if another person, like a new editor or somebody else that were to come on the team, they don't bring that spirit, then they're not gonna make it. I don't care how talented you are, it doesn't matter to me. because if you can't be humble to correction, then that's not going to work, because collaboration is what art is, and that's what we're doing. So if you can't do collaboration well, then you're not going to make it.
100% agree. The future of Goodo Studios, man. I'm curious. What does it look like in the next couple of years?
Future is very simple. We're going to be making the best ads in the world at the biggest stage, which is Super Bowl ads. So we're going to do everything we
Ooh,
can
okay.
to get there.
Say
That's
more.
it.
Say more.
It's just, I mean, like, people look to build like agencies or whatever to build like a business or whatever. I don't care about that. I just care about being the best at making ads. I'm obsessed about that. I'm probably more obsessed about content than most, and I'm okay with that. And I want to do it at the highest level. And I understand to do it at the highest level, I'm going to have a bigger business, sure, to have a bigger team to do those things. But I'm not building the team just to build the team or to just say, oh, the business is at X revenue. I'm doing something with the clear goal of we want to be shooting Super Bowl commercials. We want to be shooting the best content in the world for the best brands. And until we do that, yeah, like, we just got to keep going one day at a time.
You're going to be the next Doritos ad, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is, the way I say is like, I'm looking to build the 21st century Ogilvy. So like Ogilvy
Nice.
now, I wouldn't say, I mean, Ogilvy now as an agency, I don't really care, but like David Ogilvy himself and what he was able to build, he's like my hero. If Yeah, I would probably, if I could bring one person back alive to talk to, it would be him. But yeah, he just obsessed about doing great ads and great copy. Everything else came after that. And I think that's what I'm focused on right now, is just making the best content, producing the best systems to make the best content, and creating the best team in the world to do that. Everything else will follow.
I kind of want to tie this back into just you reading a ton of books. Is there a book or two that you recommend to get really good at
Ooh,
that?
I mean, anything by Ogilvy, I'll
Yep.
definitely recommend. Let's see, some ones that most people probably haven't read would be Marketing Metaphoria by Greg Zaltman. He is actually the OG of like customer psychology. That didn't just pop up, in the last 2 years on Twitter. He did this back in the 80s out of
Mm.
Harvard Business School. So those books, you got to get them off of, like, I don't even know, thriftbooks.com. So check those out. They're old and crusty, but those are some good books. And then Ogilvy talks about scientific advertising. I think that's what it's called. I forget what it is, but it's by Claude Hopkins. He says that you should never make an ad until you read that book 7 times. So
Ooh.
if you like Ogilvy, then the person before him is Claude Hopkins. And that book wasn't published for many years because Claude Hopkins was working at this agency, and they didn't want him to publish the book because that would have given all away his secrets. So it wasn't until like 20 years later that the book was actually published. Um, so yeah, it's a very good book.
Wow. Okay. Cool. We'll plan the show notes. Um, Going back to the future of creative studios. So, we talk about your vision, but creative studios in general, what do you think the future looks like? Will this still be physical locations? Will you be working with creators? Like, what's the future of like performance creative in your mind?
I mean, what is it, the future for me versus everybody else? I mean, I would say where everybody else is, they think that they can just arbitrage between creators and brands, but I mean, they're just pretty much just glorified project managers. But what's the difference is, we are shooting on location. We are shooting these ads high quality in person. That's what makes us stand out. So, I mean, what I'm going to be trying to do and build is do something that's different than what everybody else is doing. Like, so how the future looks, I mean, the goal is that we are the trendsetters. We are the people that are
Hmm.
original. The way I see it is that for something, a lot of people will hop on trends or hop on viral things. Those started because somebody decided to be original. Somebody decided to be different, to do it. And my goal is to build a business in a way that's original, by, just doing what people aren't doing. So if it's harder to shoot stuff in person, I will do that because we are able to do things that nobody else can replicate. Whereas like if I were just working with creators, that's a race at the bottom in my opinion. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot of people not be able to make it because there's going to be crazy price arbitrages and things like that are going to like go away that worked in 2020 but didn't work now. But I'm also not worried about that because that's not our business model. And there's a reason why I made those decisions consciously so that I could protect us for the future. Because again, in my goal, I didn't say I want to make a big business. I said I wanted to shoot Super Bowl commercials. So I think that, I want to build the production studio to that. And that doesn't necessarily always involve, ugly ads with creators that you got on Billo. So, yeah.
Some heat.
I'm okay with being. I really do think that a lot of those, platforms are hurting a lot of brands. So, not to get too deep on that, but for sure, I don't.
Time and
I
place.
that the time plays, but that they are my enemy. So
Well, no, I think it's a good. I love that distinction. I want to build. I want to. Shoot for the Super Bowl, not build a business, because there's a distinction there, right? It's like the quality over the quantity, and then also it's like it's a copy and paste industry if you think about it, right? Everyone's kind of doing the same thing. Hard's not doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It just means you might be doing something better.
yeah, I mean, like, how do you differentiate yourself if everybody's doing the same thing, copying them, right? Like that to me doesn't like the point of an ad is to stand out, right? And if the point of being the creator of an ad is like to help a brand stand out, why would you do the same thing that everybody else is doing?
Right.
It's just like it doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, like find inspiration and stuff. So I'm not saying don't, right? But you know, if you are just doing the same thing or doing something because you thought it was a good opportunity, A, when it gets hard, you're not going to have the same grit to keep going. And B, you end up like you can't like grow the business because you can only scale it, which is very hard to do. You're going to have to scale creators and how you like I have not once seen a scaled creator business do well, not because they don't make good money, but because they can't do quality control. So that doesn't make sense to me. But then the other part to that is that, as a creator yourself, you start to just kind of like people will basically say, well, if you're doing the same thing, I might as well get it cheaper, right? You're not bringing anything new to the table. So, I would say we do charge more, but that also allows us to bring something different to the table because we actually have the resources to do that. And I think for a long time as a creative person, I always was afraid of charging more money because I wasn't going to get the job. But then I realized that if I don't charge money, I can't have a team. And if I don't have a team, then I can't do the great work that we want to do. So it goes hand in hand. And I think people miss that. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of racing to the bottom when it comes to a lot of these business models.
When you think about the future, this is a hot topic, but how do you think AI will affect our industry?
I'm not afraid of that. I think it will be helpful. But like the simple way of putting it is that if AI is learning by rules, right? They're learning rules and they're gonna do those rules really well and they'll be consistent. But think about how art has progressed. It was about people breaking rules, not following the rules. And that to me is going to be the X factor is who can be creative. If you can be creative, then you're going to be very valuable in a world that's going to become automated. And so, if anything, like it only makes us more valuable because you're paying us for creativity. So I think that's great. And then obviously there's going to be technology things that allow us to be more creative, do things easier or faster or whatever. But it allows us, it opens up more time for us to be creative. And I think the people that have jobs or, that are very just like task based, like, yeah, that's going to be tough for them. But for, a business like us, paying us to be creative and we'll break the rules. AI doesn't break rules. They'll just follow the rules. So yeah, that's what will make us different. They're going to learn about like, they're going to copy all the videos that have been done before, but they're going to only do what's been done before. They're not going to do anything new. we will do what's new. So that's why people will keep working with us in the future.
Do you think AI would ever replace creativity?
No, I think like just based on that like exact premise that it's creativity is about knowing the rules and then knowing when to break the rules and being original, trying to find things like yes, there's nothing new under the sun. Yes, things are like, maybe similar or whatever, but I do feel like the creativity is about it's it's not recorded, right? Like it's got to be something new, and I don't think that AI can do that. Maybe just at least not right now. Maybe if they had a own mind of their own, but then at
Yeah,
that
AGI.
point, I feel like that just gets more scary than anything. So I think we probably have bigger problems if they have their mind of their own. So I think that's where humans can come in. It's like we do have a mind of our own, and I think we should use that to our advantage. So I think that would be true for creative as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's talk about being a millennial because this is the Millennial
Let's
Method
do it.
podcast. I mean, you already told me like mid 20s, late 20s, kind of the cusp of millennial. But how does it feel to be in your late 20s?
Well, it's funny because yeah, 27, so on the cusp of being a millennial. But I've been married since I was 24. I just turned 24. And I think too, like having, gone just straight into working as a professional versus like going to college, definitely like kind of made me more mature faster and just kind of had to like grow up faster. So I kind of skipped a lot of like, I don't know, different phases. Or I missed out on different experiences, whatever. So yeah, I definitely think it's a new space in my like I've gotten a lot more mature quicker. So I think I find myself feeling a little bit older. Like yeah, you'll catch me
I'm
just like
29, bro. You're a couple years
but
younger, man.
but I'm like
So mature.
but to me I'm like it's like I don't know, I still feel like super young. I'm like I'm ready to go. I'm like
You
like
don't feel in
to
the
me
joints yet?
no, no, but I'm just saying, like, I think, like, it's funny because it's like we have so much time, man. Like, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
we look at life so minutely. Maybe that's just, I think millennials do that. They're like looking to get everything right, like by 25, or like, it's like, no, it's okay. Like, you gotta have a long-term view of things. So that's, at least for me, that's what I try to do. So I'm like, I've got time, man. I'm good. I'm good.
Very good perspective. Did you ever think you'd be in this career where you're at right now? If you look back.
Dude, I could never predict this, man. Could never, for sure. I think that's like the beauty. You gotta be open to life, man. You gotta be open to opportunities, and you gotta always, because like if it was me, if it was my plan, I'd still be dancing right now, right? Which is crazy to think about, but it's true, like I would do I but I'm also in a place where I'm like I wouldn't want to do anything else either. So it's funny how life changes, so like how you plan it versus the reality of it. I just think you got to be open to it. I think I've talked a lot about just being humble. You got to just be willing to learn and grow and kind of take in those experiences as is. And, things will figure itself out. There's no rush, right? Like, and I think people are looking for, I don't know, I don't even know what you would consider success or how people define it, but I think, I take that long term view. It took me 10 years just to become a professional dancer. I'm only like year 3, 5, like you know what I mean? Like to me, I'm like a baby comparative to like where I want to be in my career. But I also know it's gonna take that time. So yeah, I mean, but where am I gonna be in 10 years? I mean, I could have an idea, but shoot, life's crazy. A lot can happen in just 3 months, let alone a year. So it's hard to predict.
So you were dancing for 10 years, 14 years old? Or, let's see,
So I
was it age
danced when
17?
I started when I was 8. Then I trained till age 18. Then like danced professionally 18 to 22.
Dude, that's amazing. That's what's up.
21, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, I have one of my coworkers, he's like, bro, you're so young. I got 10 years on you. And he's a millennial too. He's like about to turn 40. But that just shows you like, dude, there's so much time. especially for the younger millennials like me and you. I try to keep that perspective, especially when I mess up. I'm just like, bro, I'm only like year 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, don't you think it's I'm not sure. Like, I think just growing up, like, a lot of our parents are like, in the baby boomer era, and
Yeah.
they're luckiest people in the world, you know what I mean? They could buy a house for like $2. So yeah, I think it's just interesting because I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing, like in that generation, is like, oh, work hard, all this stuff, and it's just like life and has changed so drastically, like I think the world has changed so drastically. I think people have really questioned what they value. It's very different than older generations. And so I think that's really coming out to play now. And it's exciting to see how maybe the world will change because of it. But I know for me, like, yeah, like at least one of the best things I've learned from the older generation would be just the patience. Like they have the patience, they've worked really hard and they had patience. So I think we've grown up in a world of like a lot of like um, impatience,
Yeah.
because we
Abundance.
grew up with technology, growing like the internet kind of was like when we were kids. So like we are used to that speed, whereas like other people haven't, and I think that's hurt us in a bit. So I think just try to just slow it down. That's my biggest advice.
And then you think about what the generations younger than us, it's even faster. So it'll be interesting
Yeah,
to
it's
see.
crazy, dude.
I mean, I was playing
Yeah.
N64, man. So
Yeah,
like
I remember when I had to like boot up stuff, like
it'll
had to
blow
like
the thing. And
blow it in, now it's just like just jump right onto your phone and you're just like wired in. So yeah, it's crazy. Definitely a
did
huge difference now.
you have a favorite N64 game?
Oh man. I mean, Mario 64 is
Oh,
solid.
easy.
But I love like GameCube was really what was my jam. And some Super Mario Brothers,
Ooh. That's
or
Smash.
Smash. That's love Smash.
They
I
still
could
got
do that all
tournaments.
day.
It's pretty
I
crazy.
know. I know. I'm not
Man,
in those though, but I
same. I
love
play
Smash.
for fun. Yeah, a little drinker here, two in there. Speaking of drinks, though, I know you've been sober for 5 years. Is that correct?
I have. I have,
Dude, that's
yes.
amazing, man. How's that been?
It's good. So it's, part of my story is that after my injury, I got into a really dark time. And yeah, I just caught myself escaping myself. It all kind of came to a head, and I realized that I wanted to not do that anymore. I also felt like I wanted to protect myself in the future. I know that life gets hard, and I didn't want to have, any sort of substance kind of get in my way or be my crutch. So yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, May 31st, I don't know what 5 years from here was, 2018. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So May 31st, 2018, just like I'm never going to drink again, never look back. And it's kind of interesting because it coincides right when I started. So basically like,
Hmm.
as long as I started, I was in Europe at the time by myself, but I I basically, when I came back from that trip, is when I started, my business and just freelancing. And yeah, so it's kind of like it goes hand in hand, my sobriety and doing business. So yeah,
That's that's pretty wild. I mean, you can correlate the two.
yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely given me like clarity of mind and I think it's definitely been very helpful for me to, just like, be present with myself as much as possible. And it's just what I've needed. I mean, I think that people can drink, I don't care. But for me, I needed that change. I needed that boundary because I think for me, it's just like I never wanted to get back to where I was. And
Mm.
so that boundary really, by having that boundary, it really has helped me. So yeah, I mean, it's probably protected me in so many situations. I have no, it's one of those things where you don't even know at that point because like you're kind of away from it. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Life could be very different if that wasn't the case. But yeah, very grateful for my decision for sure.
Yeah, I had a buddy he celebrated 4 years recently. Just totally different person. So that's just amazing. When you think about like the people that are going through that right now, right? I'm sure it was a dark time, and those people that are suffering, they're kind of in that dark moment right now. Do you have any advice for them on, just the light's gonna be on the way?
Yeah, I mean, definitely getting help is everything. Like, I definitely have been part of certain groups, and that's been helpful. I would say that to just start being honest with yourself, that's the biggest thing. It's very scary to do, but I think in a world of constant, inundation of information, sounds, music, videos, all this stuff, we don't listen to ourselves. So I think more people just need to take some time and listen, and then you know they'll be that'll help a lot to hear maybe why they're feeling that way, why they're going to those routes, because usually it's something a lot deeper. So yeah, I know for me it was a big identity thing. Saw myself as a dancer and always had been. I prided myself on that. So when I lost it all and I didn't have anything, I felt very lost. So that was that for me. It's obviously very different for every single person. But yeah, getting help and just listening to yourself. It's scary, but very, very important to do.
The injury thing, I totally empathize with that because I'm going through it right now. I have this knee injury that's been, both my meniscus I've torn,
Oof.
and yeah, one of them specifically has not gone away, and I'm the type of person where it's like, if like I'm either cold turkey or not, and so because I
Hmm.
know if I break dance while in this like small injury, I'm not gonna be able to heal. And so I went cold turkey, did physical therapy for 3 or 4 months, and it still hasn't healed. And it's really sucks. And so I totally empathize with that. I don't know what to do. Like, should I just quit breakdancing altogether and maybe do something else? But, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's tough.
I think
It's tough.
it's really tough. Yeah, to know like that. I think the biggest thing that I think has helped me, even as I've built the business, is that I am not the work. And so I think for a very long time, I was the work, like with dancing. It was very much like my personality of who I am. So yeah, I mean, I don't really like calling myself an entrepreneur. I don't like any of that name calling stuff. Like I hate it because it's not really fully who I am. And it's not really like my identity. It's like, you know, I am me first and foremost. And the work is it's just the thing that I do that I really enjoy, but doesn't make me. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is finding identity. I think a lot of millennials in general have put a lot of stock in their work versus
Yeah.
themselves, and I
Labels.
think that's really tough. I don't know if that's always their fault. I think it might be the other generations putting that on them, but I do feel like that is true for millennials.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think identity is super important. Well, Matthew, I appreciate it, bro. I know we're just a little over time here, but I really appreciate you sharing your stories, and it's good
Always,
seeing you,
man.
man. It's good seeing you. I got to see you in
Always.
person sometime.
I know. Yeah, we got to make it happen. Are you still in San Francisco right now, or are
I'm
you are
still in
you
San
up in?
Francisco. I'm
Okay.
here.
All right.
I'm
All
in a
right.
little like podcasting studio, so just swing on
Oh,
by,
that's
man.
sick.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah.
cool.
It's under my mom's basement, but I mean, I turned it into
Hey,
something.
that's kind of sick. Is that your day-to-day office?
It is now. I used to work in my room, but I was like, I gotta like this door right here. That's my
Uh-huh.
room. But they had this
Oh,
extra room that had
sick.
a lot of like storage. I was like, I'm gonna toss all that out and then just have a place to work. And so, yeah, man.
Dang, that's legit. That's legit. I like it. Yeah,
Thanks,
well, I
man.
mean, obviously, if you're ever in Seattle, copies on me. We got the studio. You can work out of here. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of people will find value. Is there anything else any closing thoughts you want to give before we head out? Career, creative studio, being a millennial, anything?
Mm. Man, just work hard. That's the biggest thing. Like I think, you got to service other people. It's all about serving others, whether you're in by working by yourself, working with a team. If you can serve other people, man, it's life changing, and it makes work way more enjoyable because you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for other people, and that's what I love about what I get to do. Like, yes, I love talking about ads. Yes, I like to do whatever, but I just like to help people and their businesses. It's the coolest thing for me. That's why I like working with a lot of different businesses and brands because get to meet a lot of people and what they're doing and what they're building, and that's really exciting to me. And that always excited me, even when I was freelancing. And I want to keep that energy. And I think if you do that, you know, you'll be set. So those are my closing thoughts on that.
Ooh, a little pen drop there, you know, just
Yeah,
dropping that. Yeah,
exactly.
where can people find you, man?
Find me on Twitter mainly, but LinkedIn, Matthew Gattozzi, and I got a newsletter that goes out every Thursday.
Check it out,
So
by the way. Such a good
your
newsletter.
content should sell. Yeah. So just talking about content. So if you want to learn about how to make converting content, that's a good place to start.
Sweet. I'll recommend it. And GOODOSTUDIOS.com, right? That's your website?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out. I appreciate your time, man. This is exciting for me, and I can't wait to share it. So,
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
all right, brother. Take care.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for checking out the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That's where we have these episodes, as well as our YouTube channel. Just look up the Millennial Method. And again, thanks for letting me be between your ears. It truly means the world. And I hope you have a happy, healthy, and wealthy life. I'll see you at the next one.